first, she bears a male. That is.
So this morning, we're about to read the parasha of Bamidbar, and it made me think that there's actually a very interesting concept about the parasha of Bamidbar, which is very relevant to us specifically now. If you have a look in this week's parasha, one of the things that it tells us is about the role of the tribe of Levi, that they had a very specific role to play in the Mishkan at that time, later in the Beis HaMikdash. So the tribe of Levi is split into two groups, the Kohanim, and their job was to work inside the Mishkan and to bring those sacrifices and whatever else they had to do. And then you had the Leviim, and their job was to sing and to play music during the time of the sacrifices, as well as they had the job of guarding the Mishkan and dismantling the Mishkan at certain times and reassembling the Mishkan and carrying it through the desert and so on and so forth. Either way you look at it, the tribe of Levi is the tribe who had to represent the Jewish people in the Mishkan. Now, the question is this. If you read that story of the Jews in the Mishkan, so do you get the impression, and you probably get the impression, that only the tribe of Levi had the right to be in the Mishkan? Now, I'll explain to you what I mean by that. The fact is that only the tribe of Levi actually worked in the Mishkan, that we know. The question is, did the Jews have the right to be in the Mishkan? It's an interesting question. Did the Jews have the right to be in the Mishkan? So if you have a look in Rashi, when he comments on the fact that the tribe of Levi was appointed to be in the Mishkan, Rashi immediately says that the tribe of Levi is there as the representatives of the Jewish people. In other words, and he uses a very interesting expression. He uses the expression that actually all the Jews are meant to serve in the Mishkan. It's the particular language that he uses. But it's only the tribe of Levi who actually serves in the Mishkan. Okay? And they serve in the Mishkan, he says, as our representatives. To the extent that the Torah will tell us later on in Parashas Korach that the Jewish people had to actually pay the tribe of Levi for their services. They paid in what's called Truma and Meiser, the donations that you had to give from your property, or basically from your produce. You had to give something to the Kohen and you had to give something to the Levi. So that the Torah says very clearly is Chelef avodaschem asher heim oivdim, that is because, or in lieu of, the work that they do on our behalf. So they're our paid agents to be represented in the Mishkan. It's a very interesting concept. So that kind of implies that by rights, we should all have access to the Mishkan. But for some reason or another, that access is not available. Not only is it not available, but if a person who was a non-Levi or a non-Kohen would go into the Mishkan, it was actually a capital offense. So it seems a bit strange over here. Like on the one hand, we're not allowed in, and on the other hand, they are our paid representatives, almost as if to say, doing our job. So we've got to understand what's going on over here. Park that thought for 1 second, and let's fast forward a little bit. When Mashiach comes, please God, immediately, and we have the restoration of the Beis HaMikdash. So you can well assume that the same rules will apply again, right? So when the Beis HaMikdash is restored, you can assume that we'll have the Kohanim bringing the offerings and the Leviim doing those other jobs, looking after maintenance, the music, etc., etc. That's what you think, right? What about us? Well, again, you would assume that the same rules are going to apply, and just as we were not allowed into the Mishkan in that time in history, we won't be allowed into the Beis HaMikdash except for certain precincts when Mashiach comes. But that's not actually the case. In fact, we're told that we'll have access at the time of the Beis HaMikdash that is unprecedented access. And in order to understand how that is possible, let's take a look at this. Next week is Shavuos. And please God, we'll celebrate in Yerushalayim with Mashiach, and we'll be able to read, as we always do, the story of the giving of the Torah and the 10 Commandments. One of the things that we read about in the 10 Commandments, or just before the story of the giving of the Torah, is that Hashem tells Moshe to tell the Jewish people, Va'atem tiyu li Mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh. That you should be for me, this is Hashem telling Moshe to tell the Jewish people, you will be for me a kingdom of kohanim and a holy nation. So what's Mamleches kohanim, a kingdom of kohanim? What does that mean, a kingdom of kohanim? So there are various interpretations of exactly what that means. The simplest explanation is that just like a kohen is somebody who is unique and separated from the rest of society in order to have the opportunity to serve Hashem, so the Jewish people will be separated from the rest of society, and we'll have this special role, the so-called light unto the nations, that we've got to serve Hashem in higher measure. One of the classic commentaries on the Torah is called the Baal HaTurim. The Baal HaTurim is attributed to Rabbi Yaakov Baal HaTurim, who maybe is more well known for his very important halachic work, the Tur, which is the basis of the Shulchan Aruch. Now, what the Baal HaTurim does is he gives on Chumash, he gives these very short, punchy insights into the wording, specifically the wording of the parasha. Sometimes he'll talk about a gematria, sometimes he'll tell you how many times the particular phrase appears in the Torah and how all the different contexts relate to each other. When it comes to Mamleches Kohanim, this promise that Hashem says to Moshe, tell the Jewish people that you'll be a kingdom of Kohanim, he uses a very intriguing expression. He says, Kohanim Gedolim, that every Jew should actually be a Kohen Gadol. Now, what's unique about the Kohen Gadol is not only is it that a Kohen is allowed into the Mishkan, into certain areas, or into the Beis HaMikdash, into certain areas that the rest of the population is not allowed, but rather the Kohen Gadol, as we know, is the person who has access to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, to the Holy of Holies. So right at the beginning, when Hashem gave the Torah and for the first time formally announced the nature and structure of the Jewish people, at that point in time, according to the Baal HaTurim, we were all awarded the status of Kohen Gadol. Every single one of us, Kohen Gadol. So what went wrong? How come we don't have access into the Mishkan or the Beis HaMikdash? And not only that, but if we were to go in, it's a capital offense. How did that change so dramatically? So what happened? Again, if you look at Rashi in this week's parasha, he'll tell us, originally, the firstborns were supposed to be the ones to serve in the Beis HaMikdash, but they lost that opportunity at the time of the sin of the golden calf. So by extension, the Baal HaTurim's view is that all of the Jewish nation had the right to be Kohanim Gedolim, to be wonderful, great people with access to the Holy of Holies, but because we sinned with the golden calf, we lost that opportunity. It's interesting, right? And therefore, ever since we lost that opportunity, we only have representation in the form of the tribe of Levi. So they can represent us in the Mishkan or in the Beis HaMikdash, but we can't actually be there. But they're our shluchim, and the expression is shluchoi shel adam kamoisa, that when somebody is your representative, it's pretty much as good as you yourself being. Now, at the beginning of this week, we learned that there's a teaching of the Maharal Prague, a very interesting teaching, where he says that everything reverts to its natural state. And effortlessly, actually. Anything that you leave without intervention will revert to its natural state. So if we borrow that same principle, which the Maharal taught as the core principle of Geula, the core principle of that it's not that Mashiach has to come and revolutionize the world. Actually, Mashiach comes to revert the world back to its natural state because it's currently in an unnatural state. So if we use that same principle here, then Kohen Gadol is our natural state. That's actually how every Jew is meant to be, to have the highest level of connection to Hashem and the greatest access to the holiest place on earth. That's our natural state. The fact that we were barred from having access to the Beis HaMikdash, to the Mishkan, that was because of an unnatural situation, because we did something that we should not have done, which was the golden calf. So because of that, we forfeited the right, but we only forfeited that right temporarily. The natural state is that we should actually be a Kohen Gadol. So what's going to happen when Mashiach comes? The natural state is going to be restored. So that means that when Mashiach comes, every single one of us will naturally revert to a position where we can enter the Beis HaMikdash, and not just the area reserved for the Kohanim, but we can actually enter every part of the Beis HaMikdash, including the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Rebbe makes an interesting observation. Says, during the time of the Beis HaMikdash, the Kohen Gadol, who was allowed into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, was only allowed there once a year on Yom Kippur. In other words, not only did the person have to be of the right caliber, but the timing had to be of the highest level. There had to be the right kind of holiness in the world, so as to facilitate the Kohen Gadol being able to go into the Beis HaMikdash. When Mashiach comes, again, the world reverts to its natural state. The natural state of the world is that Hashem's holiness is revealed all the time. Not only on a special occasion like Yom Kippur, but every day has that level of exposure, that level of awareness, that level of holiness that ordinarily is reserved only for Yom Kippur. So therefore, when Mashiach comes and the world reverts to its natural state, every single Jewish person will be like the Kohen Gadol and allowed access to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, to the Holy of Holies. And it won't be reserved for only one day out of the year, but actually will be allowed to enter the Holy of Holies any time that we choose, which is an incredible thought, because if you had that opportunity, who wouldn't grab that opportunity with both hands? So that's what we have to look forward to at the time of the coming of Mashiach, is to have that intimate closeness with Hashem that ordinarily was reserved for the highest, most spiritual member of the society, will be available to every single one of us any time that we choose. Please God, we shouldn't have to wait very long. We should have that opportunity and be able to go into the Holy of Holies sooner than we think, and maybe even this Shabbos.